chance to get logged on. So if you'll just sit back and hold tight, we'll be rolling in just a few minutes.
Okay, I just got a thing that said bad network connection. This is because of your network, your audio is not working properly. People are hearing you choppy or not hearing you at all. No.
We are.
It says here's some tips. Turn off your webcam, close any programs that might be using your network. Well, it looks like I've got instant tech support, AVG, I don't need that. Mute the microphone. Okay, it says to turn off your webcam, close any programs that might be using your network. Does it sound okay, or is it? So it's.
Okay, well, I think we've got everybody online that's coming on, so we'll go ahead and get rolling today. We are so glad that you have joined us for our LCMS Rural and Small Town Mission webinar on youth ministry. And it is great to have all of you with us today. And we welcome with us to present the presenter I know absolutely the best of any presenter we've had, because she happens to be my wife. Angie Kollbaum's here. Angela comes to us with over 15 years in youth ministry and family life ministry leadership, and so we are thrilled that she is presenting for us today, and she'll talk about parent partnerships and how to engage the youth and all sorts of different topics. And every once in a while, just because I'm her husband, I'm probably going to chime in, but she told me I couldn't take things over, so I'll try my best to be a good husband, but just maybe be an even better director here. So we'll get rolling. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Gracious Lord, our Heavenly Father, we give you thanks this day for the opportunities you set before us to do the work that you would have us do, especially to affect the lives of the youth whom you have placed among us, that we can bring to them the light and life of your good word of salvation in Jesus Christ. As we endeavor to learn more today, open our hearts and minds that we might learn from those who are gathered here today, especially from Angie. We pray, O Lord, that you would guide and direct those activities which you have planned in advance for us to do. In the name of Christ Jesus, we pray. Amen. And Angie, I turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to start out with a disclaimer that I am not a professional presenter, and I just have a passion for working with youth and with their families, and
Hopefully the Lord will use me in this presentation today.
I'd like to start out with
The first slide. If you can think back to when you were in high school or junior high, and what was the one thing that you really liked about youth group? Was it the fellowship? Was it the Bible study? Was it the fun stuff we got to do? But what made it cool? A lot of kids like to come to youth group because they're away from parents, or they get to do something different, or they get to. We've had kids that
have gone on youth trips with us that had moved in Missouri that had never left the state of Missouri before. So they've gotten to go to New Orleans, or San Antonio, or
Mississippi last summer.
Mississippi, Alabama,
Mississippi, Colorado, and they get to serve God while getting to see different areas of the country. So anyway, so those are things that make it kind of cool for some kids, and the importance of having other positive Christian role models in a teenager's life is so important today. But we need to always remember that the most influential and the most important are their parents and caretakers, whether that's grandparents, aunts, uncles,
mom, dad, whoever.
So a partnership
can be defined as an association of two or more people working together to achieve this goal.
And with is that better? Okay. And so
our goal, or my goal as a youth leader, is to bring kids closer to God and to strengthen their faith. And I think that's pretty much what all parents really want to do. So we're working for the same goal.
Synonyms
for partnership:
cooperation,
collaboration,
coalition,
alliance,
union, affiliation,
connection, and relationship. And I think relationship is probably the most important.
Because when there's a relationship with the youth, and when there's a relationship with the parents, it's going to be better for everybody
involved. So what are some of the challenges we face in rural, small-town youth work, or even if you're in the city and you have a small congregation?
Youth work is
tough,
and some churches don't have the resources to have a DC or a
youth worker, so often
we are
volunteers.
So as we do
our youth work
as volunteers, we need to find ways to continue in the position and strengthen
and so that they can do it for longer. It's really hard on you when there is a
constant need and youth direction, when there's never any kind of consistency. And as youth workers,
whether we're volunteer parents,
PCs, or whatever, we all have a passion for serving. So what can we do to strengthen the structure so that we can provide more consistency for the youth? I think the most important thing is to engage parents, whether we're a parent of one of the youth that is the volunteer, or whether we're a paid youth worker, or whether we're a DCE or youth pastor, whatever the case may be. It's really important to engage the parents. I came up with this kind of corny acronym, CC. Communicate, encourage, collaborate, and equip. Why do we want to communicate with parents? Well, I think it's really important to understand that parents are trusting us with the most valuable possession, not possession, but their children.
It's really important. They don't want to just
let their children
go off with someone that they don't know. So it's important to know you as a person and know where you're coming from.
I think that communication is an opportunity to allow the parents to get to know you and have a relationship with you. If they don't know you, they're not going to feel as comfortable letting you take their child across country or even for an evening at the youth room. I think that part of communication is respecting that families are very busy today. Our teenagers are pulled in many different directions. Parents are working full-time plus. I don't think we need to put one more have to on a family or on the youth. But I think it's really important before we do like a national youth gathering or a summer event, we call meetings that include the parents so they know what the plan is, where we're planning to go, and all the logistics. Because realistically, we can't really depend on our teenagers to communicate that. Unfortunately, our teenagers live in an age of constant communication with social media and texting and whatnot, but that doesn't always mean that they let their parents know that, hey, the youth group is going to Colorado on a sermon event June 6th through the 13th. That's just not something that they'll say, yeah, I think we're going on a trip somewhere, which any of you who work with youth know that that's basically the way that works. But you want to include parents in those family meetings so that they know what's going on, and then they can also offer. We've had instances where parents have. I just closed it about the. Sorry. We also have instances where we are traveling somewhere. A family member will say, "Oh, well, so-and-so's uncle is a pastor at the church in wherever, and you guys could go worship there." And it gives an opportunity to make connections across lives. The other reason we want to communicate with parents is that parents need to know what your passion is and where you're coming from as a youth worker. Is your goal just to keep the kids busy with fun stuff, or are you really wanting to look at faith building and studying God's Word and making a lifetime difference for these kids? And also, I think this team approach to youth ministry is really important. Many churches have a youth and family team that will support and supplement what the youth group is doing or what family ministry is doing, and that really helps as well. How do we communicate with parents? Well, we live in a world of a lot of communication. We can communicate by including them in the meetings, like I said before. Newsletters, most churches still have some form of a newsletter or church bulletins that go out weekly. Facebook, our youth group has a Facebook page I use to post things on, and a lot of parents are on there too, so they can see what's going on. As a matter of fact, I think the parents check the Facebook page more than the kids do sometimes. Texting, I have set up groups on my phone, and I have text groups for the kids, and I have text groups for the parents, so that we can, because there's things that we want them to know, It's just that parents don't
something
need
to
to
worry about that, oh, we're going to decide or whatever. But then
and there's the parents
need
need
to know about where and when and the logistics of things. So,
Guys, we're having some audio issues, so hold on just a second. We're going to get Angie squared away, and we'll give it a shot here. So hang on just a second.
it is kind of, I don't think it's you. I think it's this.
You think it's this? Because I had that same came out. Mute. Okay.
Can you pull up your email?
Hang on just a second. We're having Angie call in because we're having a little bit of network problem.
Can I hang it up? Okay. All right. Is that better? Okay. All right. Now I need to get back to where communicating with parents. How do we do that? Facebook. Is that going to do that? Okay. Some churches have Twitter accounts, websites, email. I think that I personally, because I'm getting older and I can't handle doing a million different social medias, I just make it really clear that I will do texting and Facebook, and then I try to make contact with parents as much as possible face-to-face, which I think is probably the most effective with parents, and it really shows that you have more of a desire to make a one-on-one connection with parents if when you do see them at sporting events or whatever, you speak with them about, about what's going on and what's happening in the kids' life. Okay. So the second, can I go ahead and change my slide? Is that okay? But you're moving my mouse. Just a sec.
You gotta wait a second.
Okay. All right. The second thing that we do is encouragement. How do we encourage parents? I think that parenting is hard. I have 5 kids of my own. I've gotten 3 of them through their teenage years, so I think that that's an accomplishment in itself, that they are all living and fairly healthy as 20 years old, 20, 21, and 22. But parenting teenagers is really tough, and I think that parents often feel like they're alone and that they don't have other parents that are going through the same things, that they're the only ones that have a daughter that, gets histrionic and slams her door or screams and yells, or that they're the only ones that have a son that's broody and doesn't want to talk to anybody. And I think sometimes when we have those meetings that parents are included, it's really awesome when you see the parents having side conversations and they're talking and you hear them saying, oh, you have those same things going on at your house that I have going on. We're not all islands that are just all out on our own. We have similar issues that we're all dealing with. So I think that that's one way that we can encourage parents is in the opportunity, when they have the opportunities to network with the other parents in the youth group. I think another way that we can really encourage parents is I always try to be very intentional about finding something positive about every kid, because there are no bad kids in my book. I think that kids sometimes make stupid decisions. Kids sometimes will do things that you think, well, that didn't work out the way they had planned to. But I think that every kid has good qualities, and I think that if we can find those good qualities and point those out to the parents, I think that helps them to realize that they are doing a good job, and it reinforces the things that they are doing well. And I think it also helps them to know that we're on their side, that we're not looking to be critical of what they're doing as a parent, or we're not looking to replace them, because there are some parents that might feel that way. And I think that just catching the kids being good and telling the kids and telling the parents that, because, you know, they are an extension of mom and dad, and mom and dad need to hear sometimes. I know as a parent, you know, you go to parent-teacher conferences or you get a phone call from the school. Sometimes the things that you hear are the negative. And I think it's really nice if we can hear the positive once in a while and find those positive things. Another thing that I like to do after every event that's our big events, not like getting together to play cards or whatever, our Wednesday night things, but after every new National Youth Gathering and after every servant event, I try to write a note to each of the parents thanking them for allowing me to have that experience with their kid, because there is something really awesome about spending that time with the youth that I really believe is a privilege. I think that as youth workers, we're given a privilege that a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And I like to point that out to the parents, and I usually try to find something that I can say that their son or daughter contributed to the trip. I don't care. I've taken a lot of kids on trips. You can always find something positive about every one of them. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a struggle, but for the most part, every kid brings something to the table, whether that's their quiet disposition that's supportive of the other kids, or whether that's somebody who sits and listens to the boisterousness of the other kids and laughs and just doesn't get involved in any kind of drama. You can find a positive somewhere in there. So I think that is really important to share with parents and let them know that they are doing a good job. And what happens when we encourage our parents, we provide them with the encouragement that they need, and it also benefits the youth, and it benefits the church and the kingdom at large, because we need to learn to encourage each other more. In a world where we're so judgmental and looking for fault in everything, and nobody wants to take responsibility for their actions, I think that it's really nice to hear that kids are making good decisions, and it's really nice for parents to know that their children are doing the right thing. And so I think that it promotes a healthy and positive Christian environment for the youth as well as for the parents. Okay, the next one would be collaborate. I think with collaboration, how do we collaborate with parents? I think my personal philosophy is working from strengths. You know, you're going to have parents that are really good at organizing things. You're going to have parents that are really good at working with the kids. A few years back, we had a parent that was really good at doing like the goofy games and running around with the kids, and he had the energy for it. So, you know, find ways that they can help that they feel comfortable with and that they want to help with. The other thing that's kind of important is you need to respect the youth, as far as I've had some kids who've said, oh, please don't ask my parents to help with youth. I just don't want them to be here. Well, yes and no. I think sometimes that is the case, and they'll often say it in front of their parents, and you just kind of have to go, okay, well, but there are ways that you can still include those parents, even though the kids want other adults interaction, and for whatever reason, sometimes they're just being teenagers, but finding ways like this is a real simple way, but the parent that they don't necessarily want it, all the youth stuff, they would host part of the progressive dinner that you would do, or maybe they would come in and help set up for an Advent dinner, or however they would want to help so they feel involved. Some parents, I had a really awesome parent say to me a few years back who said, I want my kids to have a youth experience, and I don't necessarily, I'll help you, I'll support you, but I don't want to be a part of it because I want them to make connections with other strong Christian role models in our community, and I don't want it to just be us. And I thought, that's a very healthy way to look at it, too. But some parents want to be there, and I think that we need to respect that, too. I think that the other way that we can collaborate with them is to not overschedule their teens. I think sometimes when you look at, in rural communities, the kids that are involved with sports and the kids that are involved with speech or drama or music are the same ones that are going to be involved with the youth group. And I think that we need to be respectful of the many things these kids are in, and their family time is very important too. And I think that if we make that very clear, and sometimes, you hear of some youth groups that'll schedule things on New Year's Eve, or in some places that'll work because every youth group is different. But if you have pushback from parents, you need to look at and say, well, what's the issue here? And if it's an issue where these kids don't have any time with their parents, maybe you don't schedule something during Christmas break. Maybe you do it in January when things are a little slower, or you do it after a basketball game when it's just for an hour or two. But you need to be respectful of those boundaries so that parents, youth group is important, but that family bonding time and that family time is more important. And we need to recognize that and keep that in the fronts of our minds as we're planning things. I've had to, Easter breakfast is a big thing. Most youth groups do Easter breakfast as a fundraiser. And being graceful and kind when a kid says, I can't be there to set up because that's when Grandma has our Easter dinner because we go to the other side on Easter Sunday. Being understanding of those things and not putting guilt trips on the parents or the kid is going to be much better in the long run than if you look at them and say, well, you have to be there because if you're not there, then you're not going to get your part of the fundraiser or whatever. I think it's really important to be respectful of family comes first and family needs to be the most important. The other thing that I think is real important that we can collaborate with parents is, as youth workers, we will hear kids complain about their parents. We will hear kids complain about how they got in trouble for this and I think it's really important as youth workers to remember it's not our place to undermine the parents. We need to be supportive of parents. Whether we agree with the decision or not is irrelevant, but if we want to build a trusting relationship with the parents, they need to know that we're not sitting at youth group on Wednesday nights or Sunday afternoon or whenever saying, oh, that's a raw deal. Your parents should have never grounded you for that. First of all, we're only hearing one side of the story, and secondly, it's not our place to second-guess the parents because they are the ones responsible for the kids. And I think you can be supportive without being judgmental. I know that I've had a couple instances where I've had to look at young teenage boys and say, well, do you really think that was a good idea that you did that? And usually they'll look at me like, oh, she's going to agree with Mom and Dad, and then that's where it ends. But the reality is we don't want to do anything that makes parents feel like we're compromising their position with their child because we shouldn't be. That's not a good relationship to have with the parents. We want a trusting relationship that can only be good for the youth. And sometimes we don't know the whole story. And kids, we all know, will tell the side that's going to make us think that they're the innocent one. And trust me, after having 5 children, we all know that they do things that they're not supposed to do. That's just human nature, and they're forgiven, and that's just the way it is. So the other thing with parents is, I think, collaborating with them and involving them in prayer. I think that a parent that might work a lot and they're not able to be a part of youth group or able to come to fundraising events or whatever, they can always pray for our youth. They can always That is something simple. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a special skill. You can just pray for the kids. And I often will ask that they pray for all of the kids, not just their own. And that's something that I do, too. My prayer list on a daily basis is mostly youth kids and their parents, because I think that that's the most powerful thing we can do for them. Another thing that we can collaborate with them, as I said earlier, is finding their strengths. If there are parents that really enjoy organizing things and they want to be in charge of the funnel cake stand for the fair or whatever, give them that power or whatever, that duty, so that they can help. And it also relieves some of the stress for you as a youth worker. You don't have to do everything. You've got parents that are very capable and very willing to help out, and you need to allow them to help. That's something that I've had to work on myself, because initially my thing was I have to do it all because I want to help the parents so they don't have to worry about it. But in reality, they want to help, and it makes my life a lot easier if I don't have to do everything, because there's just no way one person can do it all. The next thing that is on the list is equipping. How do we equip parents? I think we equip them by providing opportunities for them to get to know their kids. Something that we did when my husband was in the parish is at the end of every school year, when our seniors were leaving, we would have a special dinner for the seniors and their parents. And it was kind of a sending for them for where they're going from there, whether they were going to college, whether they were going into full-time employment, trade school, whatever. And we would include the parents and the student who had just graduated. We didn't include siblings at this point because it was kind of a special deal that we would do with just them. And we would talk to them about how do you support your child who's going off to college? What do we do so that we can continue the connection with them? Some kids would be moving 8 hours away. Some were staying at home and going to college, and that's fine. But just how do you do that transition? Equipping them with those transitional things. At our church here in Concordia, we have a family life minister who she does milestone ministry things at baptism and second grade and confirmation and high school graduation, where there's some kind of bridging between the two and educational opportunity for the parents, so that they are equipped with what's the next step. Okay, you've baptized your child. Where do we go from there? Okay, your child has gone through confirmation. Is that graduation from church, or is that time to, what do you do to continually build up their faith and work with them? So finding ways that we can give parents resources. I think being available as a resource. Sometimes parents just need to vent about the tough week they've had with Michael and the fact that he's just not listening, or he has chosen to make bad choices and stay out too late. And they don't want you to solve it. They just want somebody to talk to that can give them a Christian perspective. And that's okay. I mean, being a resource to the parents is a good way to equip them as well. Another is providing them with Bible study materials, providing them with any kind of opportunities that would come up that they could do with their kids. Unfortunately, in a lot of our churches, youth ministry is kind of a silo ministry that's off on its own, and they do their thing and everybody else in the church does their own thing. Well, I think if we can do more intergenerational things that bring, the older members of the church, the parents, you can have such an awesome intergenerational approach to things, and the kids then have not only you as a youth worker and mom and dad, but they also have, Lily, who used to be a Lutheran school teacher, but she comes and helps at VBS every year, and she's still interested in these kids. And there's connections in the church that are that can be fostered through that. And that is a way of equipping parents, because they're not alone. There's other people in the faith community that can pray for them, that can offer a hug or a you know, it's okay. I've been there. I know how hard that is. Just, it's kind of like when you're in church behind the family that has the little people, and the mom looks mortified because her kids haven't sat still. That was me for many years, because I always had one or two that their feet were too hot and they had to take off their shoes, and then they had to go to the end of the pew, and you know, you're sitting there struggling. And that if there's connections and relationships in the congregation, you know, those people that come up to you afterwards and say, it's okay, it's all right, you know, just keep bringing them to church, you know, or it's all right that your kids this is going on with them, you'll get through this. And I think that by having the connections within and the relationships is a way of equipping the parents as well. Now, something I have not done, it was a part of my family life ministry curriculum when I was working through that, was coming up with seminars and educational opportunities for parents that deal with specific things, like how do you deal with social media bullying? How do you deal with dating relationships and kids that, because in reality we do have kids that get in dating relationships that can be violent or can be unhealthy or whatever, and I would like to see some of that happening down the road as we get more established, because I think those are things that can build on, like the milestone ministries that our Family Life Minister does, that can help equip parents to be prepared for those issues that might come up. Also providing stuff on hot topics. The next would be strength of partnership. It shows when we have a partnership with parents, it shows a shared purpose and vision. We build each other up and we strengthen the faiths of ourselves, and we strengthen our youth. And I think that when we're working together and kids see that adults can work together, because sometimes kids don't see the best side of the adults in their lives. Sometimes they see the bickering and especially in church life. I hate to say it, but I know that sometimes kids can see the arguments over the kitchen because they had the Easter breakfast and one of the ladies said, well, you guys didn't clean it up very well afterwards. And it can but that's why we need to build those relationships so that they understand that the youth are not always the ones that are messing up the kitchen, and that the youth are more valuable than just providing babysitting for every event at the church, and that they actually do have something to contribute. And that leads to the mutual benefit. In our faith communities, if there's a mutual respect and a mutual acknowledgement of what we all can bring to the table, youth have a lot to contribute. I hate when I hear the youth are the future of our church, because they're not the future. They're the church right now. They are a part of our congregations, and they need to be treated as a valuable part of our congregations, not just the workhorses that the older generation is too tired and not capable of moving the chairs. Oh, we'll get the youth to do that. But rather, you know, changing and shifting the thought process behind what the value of a strong youth program, youth ministry is in a church, because it can build up the older generation, and the older generation can build up the youth in the church. And I think that's something that's very important. Another is a greater pool of resources. If we're partnered, you know, a lot of my frustration is that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing oftentimes in a church and in a faith community. And if you have partnerships and intergenerational stuff going on, you know what's happening. So you're not going to schedule things that are going to compete with other things. You're not going to try to compete for funds or compete for attention or whatever it might be. You're going to work together for the same purpose. And I think we have found that in the past, when we have worked with others, it benefits the youth and it benefits the older generation in the fact that they know who they are. I don't know how many, when we first were at my husband's first call, I would have people say, who is that? I've never seen that kid before. And then, of course, in a small town you go through, well, that's so-and-so's son and that's so-and-so's granddaughter or whatever, and make the whole family connection. And I think they know them by name. They don't have to sit and go, who is that, when they're acolyting, or who is that? One of the neatest things I had happen was I had an older lady, she was in her early 70s, that after the tornado in Joplin, we got a group of youth together to go down and work. And she came up to me, and she had been a huge supporter in as far as just, I'm so glad to see what's happening with our youth. It's so neat to see them in church. She goes, I know that I can't do a whole lot, but can I go with? And I said, well, I need another woman to go with. I would love it. And she said, well, I don't think I can do much more than make sandwiches in the school for the people that are working, because I don't think I can haul stuff around or clean up the yard. And I said, we'll take you. And it was the neatest experience, because the kids got to see her in a more personal level, and she got to see the kids on a more personal level. And there were connections made that I think are still today. And that's what it's about when we have the partnership. We're, like it says on the slide, we're united in our life and our work and in our faith. And so I think that's the reason we do that. What are the strengths? I think we should work from our strengths, not our weaknesses. I am not a brave soul. I took kids to Colorado to Lutheran Valley Retreat this summer. We had an awesome week. I hate heights. I looked at the kids and said, I will do anything else with you, but I'm not climbing that mountain to the top. I did 2 or 3 of the mountains, but I did not take the morning hike with them. And I just explained to them that that wasn't my thing, and they respected that. And I think that's a really simplified thing, but don't think that because you have a weakness you can't do things. I have that. I still was able to go to Colorado, and I was still able to have an awesome time with our youth, but there were limitations, and I went with what my strengths were, and I didn't worry about my weaknesses. Kids are the most forgiving. That's why I love working with youth. If you show a genuine interest, they are going to genuinely, they get it. They really do. A positive relationship with parents can strengthen families as well as youth groups. And parents can be your advocates for your group as well as an important member of the youth support network. They can be the ones that go to the men's club and say, you know what, they need about $300 more to get to the National Youth Gathering, or they need an in-gathering. We're trying to collect such and such for an in-gathering for them to go to a servant event. Those are ways they can help, and they can advocate for your youth. And I think that's one of the more important things, too. This is just a quote from a publication that Todd and I had looked at that has some really interesting, I hate the word programs. It says for relationships, activities, programs. I don't think that we program for our youth. I think we minister to our youth, and I think that's the most important thing. But I really like, and it says negatively, but if you turn it around and say churches that do invest in their youth find that they are likely to invest in them. Now, they said it the opposite way, that churches that don't invest in their youth find that the youth will be unlikely to invest in them. I think if you flip that around, that if we invest in our youth and the relationships and building them up and building the parents up, you're going to see long-term benefits from that. I really do. And I think you'll bring people who maybe aren't connected to a church in too, because sometimes our youth are the best evangelism that we have in a church. I don't know how many times we've had kids that have brought kids in that don't have any church family. We had kids at a lock-in one time that the one boy had never seen a Bible before. He didn't know how to look it up. And our kids jumped in and were like, oh, here, this is what you do. Don't underestimate the outreach that our youth can do. But okay, so where can you find help, partnership possibilities, partnering with other congregations in your circuit, having joint youth activities sometimes, community organizations, working with your schools if you have a Lutheran school in the area. However you can school resources. That it makes everything easier for everyone.
Well, not just Lutheran schools, but public
schools too. Oh, definitely, because there are a lot of things you can do in a public school that don't break the whole church and state rules, that you can include kids and staff and whatnot. Because I know at the public school that I worked at, I think it was a Baptist church in town, provided supplies to the school, so they had a closet that we could go to if a kid didn't have a spiral notebook. And those are outreach things too. They don't have to be big, huge events. So, then I wanted to talk just briefly. Do I have enough time to go into the? Okay. This was just another thing that came from Christianity Today about don't get discouraged as a youth worker if there are some roadblocks put up when you're trying to make these changes and including things, because as many of you know, I've heard many times, well, that's just not how we do it. That's not how we've always done it. We've always done it this way and it's worked fine. Why would we need to change it? Well, be prepared for a little bit of pushback, but in this little quote is really good because it talks about how in rural congregations, and in a large congregation too, finesse will get you a lot further in explaining the why of what you want to do. Change is scary. I don't like change either, and I think that if your change is slow and then they understand why you're doing it, and you have a goal and you have objectives, and you have a strategic plan, you can get a lot accomplished in that time. So I also wanted to talk about the youth-led ministry, which I think kind of goes into with partnering with parents, because I think that sometimes we get desperate to want to have something for our youth, and so we just kind of take it over. But in my experience, youth-led is so much better, and it's so easy for you as a youth worker. And I've identified 3 L's of youth-led ministry: listen, look, and love. Listen. What do the youth want to do? Make it about the youth and not about you. And I think that's something that is very important, because it would be really easy for me to just come up with a calendar and say, September we'll do this, October we'll do this, November we'll do this, and you know what? If I don't get anybody to come, they just didn't want to come. Well, some of it is that the kids want to do something different. Some of the kids really we did a bonfire last year, and we had, I don't know how many kids show up. It was awesome. It was so cold that night, and I didn't think we'd have anybody show up, but they did, and good thing we had a fire. Lost most of the girls to the house, but it was okay. They still had fellowship time, but you need to let the youth lead, and that's something I'm in the process of trying to get rolling here now is, what do the kids want to do? What do you want to schedule for? Did you like doing the bonfire, or would you rather do this? But let them kind of lead that. They might want to do the same things you've always done, but let it be their decision. And when they decide they don't want to do those things, help them to find alternatives. I think the other thing is, like I said before, programming versus ministry. You know, we can put programs on, and it can be all hunky-dory, wonderful, but if it's ministry, there should be a purpose to some of it. Even at the bonfire, we talked about, I can't remember what the passage was, but there was a Bible study about, it had something to do with fire and light of the world, and I know that's really bad that I can't remember, but that was almost a year ago. But we kind of coordinated that into, so that there was a Bible study that went along with the event we were doing. Getting the kids involved in reading the Bible, in maybe preparing a lesson for that. That's something that's kind of new for some kids, and some kids are really scared of that. But getting them comfortable, because the reality is they might be an elder in 10, 15 years at our congregation, and they might need to have to be able to do a devotion. So encouraging and equipping our youth, too, that when they want to, say they want to go, what's the trampoline place in Kansas City? I can't think of what the name is. Sky Zone. They want to go to Sky Zone. Okay, well, I will do the legwork and figure out, okay, well, you need to have this signed, and we have to have this date, and da-da-da, and figure out the transportation. but they come up with the idea of what they want to do. So you encourage them by helping them out with it. And some kids will say, oh, I'll talk to so-and-so and see if we can do that. Or I'll talk to this family and see if we can do a bonfire or a trail ride out there. But encourage them to take the lead. And I think if we listen to our youth, we will have a much better youth group than if we try to tell them, because that's all kids get most of the day is at school they're told, at home they're told, and it gives them a little bit of empowerment in the youth group, within reason, of course. So, and listen to what they want to learn about. You know, they want to talk about things like Bruce Jenner and the whole thing with the transsexual deal. They want to know what we believe. They want to know what the Bible says. You know, find the people in your church. Talk to your pastor about, if you don't feel qualified to do that, talk to your pastor about coming in and doing something with the kids. Again, you're bringing somebody else in, but you're helping them and listening to what they want. Look for the youth. Where are our youth? You know, they have crazy schedules, and, you know, I get very frustrated when I hear, well, I scheduled this and nobody came. Well, you scheduled it when there was a basketball game, or you scheduled it when there was a football game, or the drama production at the high school. Go to your youth. Look for those opportunities to spend time with them, and not necessarily just in youth group. Look for those times that you can maybe say, hey, how did this go, or how did that go? I love those impromptu conversations with kids, because that's when you find out what's going on in their life. My thing has always been, I wanted youth group to be a want to, not a have to. And so often our teens have so many things that they have to do. They have to go to work, they have to go to school, they have to go to practice. But I have always wanted it to be something they want to do, that they can hang out with their friends, that they can study God's Word, that it's a want to rather than a have to. A fun story is one of my youth works at McDonald's, and I've gotten to see her I think 4 times in the last week, because she's been working in the morning when I go through and get my Dr. Pepper. And Sunday at church, I got a huge hug from her, because I can't hug you through the window, but it's so nice to see you every morning, and now that I'm going back to school, I won't get to see you. And I'm like, ah. So I think those are the things that are the neat. Granted, I didn't just go through McDonald's to see her because I needed my Dr. Pepper, but it was a good opportunity to make a connection with her on a daily basis. The next one, love. Love them when you got them. The pastor that was my husband's field pastor at seminary, that was the best thing he ever said to us. And he said, cradle to grave, love them when you got them. And it's so simple, and it seems like it's too simple, but it's not. Love them. Being a teen is really tough. Being a preteen is tough too. And just being somebody that cares and is genuine and really wants to listen to them, that's what it's all about. Just love them, regardless of any of the other stuff. And, you know, if you only see them once a year, love them when you got them. Okay. Some other ideas I think I already touched on in Bible study: address relevant topics that they're interested in. I had one kid say something about, I love the Noah's Ark story, but how many times can we hear it? We've heard it every year in school, because they went to Lutheran school, and then every year in Sunday school, and it's like, we'd like to hear something else. And I can kind of see that. As a teenager, you know, maybe they want to learn more about what it was like to be a teenager on Noah's Ark. I don't know. Don't preach a watered-down, surface-level version of Christianity. They want the truth. Our youth, they know. They're not stupid. They're so smart, and they're inundated with so much information. Give them the truth, and that's one of the best things about our church. The LCMS, everything is rooted and grounded in the Word, and we have good, solid doctrine. Give it to them. Let them have it, and let them learn from that. Encourage interaction with other members of the church. You know, hook them up sometimes with somebody that might know something about what they're asking, whether that be a pastor or a teacher at the school or somewhere. And then study His Word, and most importantly, have fun. And that I absolutely love working with our youth, and it makes me sad. I've got kids that are leaving for college this weekend, and I about had a breakdown in the grocery store the other night because I said to one of them, "When are you leaving?" He's like, "I leave Saturday morning." I'm like, "No, not already." But just being excited for them, and they're just, yeah. Anyway, so fellowship is an important part of youth, but being in the Word and prayer is the most important. And if my kids leave youth group with anything, I would hope that they would know that they're being prayed for on a regular basis, and that I'm always here regardless of what's going on in their life. And that's always been my goal, is that they can always feel connected in some way. We want to build a strong, solid foundation for these guys, so that when the storms of life hit them, which it will, whether that's in college or whether it's in their 20s or 30s, that they have something that they can rely on, and that's Christ, and they know that He will always be there for them, and they have people in their lives that love and care about them, that will always preach the true Word of God to them. So that's pretty much everything. I don't know if we have any questions. These are just pictures of our...
Okay, well, we thank you, Angie, for that, and we do have a couple of questions. One, and Matt Heyer had mentioned here that he's just starting out in his family life internship, and I think this works really well with that whole idea of we've never done it this way before. He said, any tips or steps for starting this youth parent-partnered ministry well from the start? Any ideas of programs or activities or attitudes that can get things going right off the bat? And I think sometimes, even when you're stepping in somewhere, sometimes it's best just to say, we need to start fresh. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that when we started our family ministry I did my internship at our church, and what I did was, I don't know if you had to do this or not, but we did a family ministry kind of a proposal, like what you would take to the church council, and I used that when I went to my youth and family team and got them on board and explained the whys of what we were doing and why it was important to have parents involved, and kind of did some education on the front end of the people who are key, and then from there you just and parent meetings. I think having a meeting with the parents and explaining, this is what we'd like to do, this is how we'd like to have you involved in things, and just educate the parents and the youth, and it's a slow process. Now, thankfully, we never really had any kind of pushback. The biggest pushback I had was with more of the youth-led stuff, where parents had been doing a lot of the fundraising, and we were trying to do parents helping with fundraising and the youth doing the fundraising. I had more of a pushback from that because some of the parents were used to doing it all. But other than that, I think educating from the very beginning so people understand why you're doing what you're doing and what the benefit is of doing it. So that and I would start with like elders, church council, Sunday school staff, depending on what your structure is in your church, but start with the people that it can kind of trickle down from there, and then you talk to your youth and your parents and say, this is what we'd like to try, and go from there. I think that the most positive thing is if you give the information and they know the why. I think, and if it's biblically based and it has a foundation in the Word, I think that's the best way to get started.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And another thing, too, is, and this goes to another one of your points on working from strengths. Of course, that's one of my huge hot-button topics. When I'm working with congregations, I talk a lot about working from strengths, doing asset mapping. And one of the things that happens is we start to spend so much time dwelling on the negative, dwelling on our weaknesses, what we don't have. What's maybe a way we can help youth and the parents, and even sometimes more importantly, the congregation itself? Oh, we've only got 2 youth. How can we help them reframe that?
Well, I think that first and foremost, we need to get we need to change our focus from the numbers game, because the reality is it doesn't matter what the numbers are, and I think that too often success is measured by numbers, and I think we need to be more concerned with quality versus quantity. And I really believe, and I don't think I'm being naive, but I really truly believe that if you have the meat and potatoes of the Word and it's based biblically, and you have that goal of reaching those youth, if you only have 2 youth in your church, it's a success if you have 2 of them there. But
hey, you're running 50%.
Yeah,
if
you
are
if you get one. And I think that there are times that when we've had larger groups, I almost feel cheated because you don't get that one-on-one time that when you have maybe 2 or 3 kids there, you can really talk about some stuff and get to the heart of issues. So I think trying to shift the thought process in our congregations from higher numbers equal success to the quality of what we're providing for our kids. And eventually, if you have a lot of kids that aren't coming, if you're providing quality and relationships and trying to make those connections, that's going to come eventually, but it's a slow road. And there's some kids, unfortunately, that we won't be able to reach. And that's a big part of my prayer list, is to be with those kids that somebody somewhere, whether it's me, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a college professor, or whether it's a grandmother that at the right time says the right thing, that the Holy Spirit would work for those kids. But my prayer is that God uses me in the position now, and I can't get bogged down by the numbers. And when you have a congregation member say, well, how many did you have at that? Rather than saying, well, we only had 3, rather say, we had a really good group. It was an awesome time. We talked about this. We talked about that. We had some real quality Bible study time. And don't even talk about the numbers. Leave those aside and talk about the quality of what you did versus, oh, it was a great event. We had 20 kids show up. Well, you could have 20 kids show up and nothing spiritually going on. And that's, I think, as sad as if you had 2 people, well, no, because 2 people with quality, that's great if you have 2 people with a quality program. But you know what I'm saying? That just don't get bogged down by the numbers.
Not a quantity.
Yes, it's because you can have a really strong youth group with 2 or 3 kids or 1 kid, and think of the difference you're going to make with that one child or youth. It's like the starfish analogy where the guy's on the beach and he's just throwing starfish back into the ocean, and that guy says, you know, that's kind of crazy. What are you doing? And he says, I'm making a difference to the one I'm throwing back in the ocean. And sometimes that's, you know, one by one, we'll just do what we can with what we have. And just trying to make sure that the church understands where you're coming from with that it's not a numbers game. It's making a real difference versus that filling in your list saying, oh, I got all 20 spots filled.
Well, we are running short of time, but just one more thing that I think is important to hit on too, and again, coming from that idea of strengths versus weaknesses, one of the major weaknesses we have, or perceived as having, is we don't have enough leaders, adult leaders, we don't have enough folks who can do this, or we don't have this strong person who can step in and lead our youth. And so what we'll do, easy fix, let's just get all the parents and we'll just trade it around. So you talked about consistency. What are some pitfalls with that, and what's maybe we could use that model, but maybe provide the consistency as well?
So what's your question? How do you do when you've got that whole parent thing? If you can find somebody, because parents can do a very good job of running it. The problem is what happens when their child is out of youth group. Then does the youth group just fall apart because the strongest of the group who took care of everything then says, well, my kid's graduated and I'm done. It's finding the person in your congregation that has a passion and a desire, and I think most people are willing to volunteer their time if they know they have the support. That was my biggest thing at his first congregation. I had awesome parent support. I could say, what do you guys think about doing this? And they would say, well, I don't know that that'll work here because, or they'd say, yeah, let's try it. I can do this and so can do this. And so it was a collaborative effort, but I think it's important for the youth to have one key person that kind of can make sure that things are rolling. And it can't always be the pastors, because in rural congregations and smaller congregations, our pastors are doing so much stuff because they're filling in all of these other places. But if you can find somebody that's willing, but the key is to have somebody willing, you have to make sure that there's a structure that can support them, because I know that a lot of people hesitate to want to be on boards or whatever if they think that they say yes and then they'll never get out of it or they don't have any help. So somehow figuring that in, and I'm not really sure. I don't know.
It's pretty context specific. You
Yeah.
got to kind of go with what is available where you're at and figure that out.
And every church is so different. Every personality of a church is so different.
Well, we're 4 minutes past 2. It is so great to have all of you with us today. We thank you for joining us, and thank you very much, Angie, for all the information you gave for us today. It's fantastic. Just a couple of things. It's up in the chat feature, but I'll just mention the events that are coming up. We have Engaging Your Community events on September 26th. We have one up in Mora, Minnesota. And then on the 3rd of October, we have one in rural Columbus, Nebraska. We've got webinars coming up in September. On the 24th, we've got small church choirs. That's the former director from here at St. Paul High School, as well as the director from a nearby small town church, Mr. Bill Gassow and Mrs. Donna Owens will be presenting that for us. On the 15th of October, Overcoming Bad Experiences by Reverend Mark Wood, the Director of Witness and Outreach for the Office of National Mission. And then on November 19th, Leadership, the Relationship within Churches with Schools. And Terry Schmidt, Director of School Ministry for the LCMS, will be providing that information for us. And don't forget, our national conference, November 5th through the 7th at the Airport Marriott, Standing in the Harvest Field. So that's our National Mission Conference. We've got, Angie just has a quick couple of resources she wants to show you. You won't see it much if you don't get in front of there. You go.
There's some really good resources. Family-Based Youth Ministry by Mark DeVry, partnering with parents in youth ministry. They have some real good things. And then Ben Freudenberg's Family-Friendly Church also has some really good information. I would recommend, if you want to start something like this in your churches, to access any of those 3 books for information.
Great. Thank you all for being with us today. This version of the presentation will be archived, and you'll be sent a link for the PowerPoint. If you want further information or would like to connect to Angie, please contact our office, and we would be glad to get you any resources or assistance that you might need. God's blessings to you all.